Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens.
Are you nervous about anything?
No, I feel nervous.
Well, I'm kind of nervous.
I know you're just going to give me a lot of troubles.
I'm just going to Egypt to give you trouble?
Yeah.
I'm just nervous because the last time when I went there, we just fought all the time.
Yeah, I know you love to fight.
You're Mr. Jokester today.
Okay, so we're getting to know Nicole. I've been watching her introduction scenes. I've learned, looking at my notes here, she's 38, she lives in LA. She delivers pizza and she resells clothes. She's from Idaho. She met Mahmood while she was traveling in Egypt, and they were together for 2 days in Egypt. She flew home. They talked online for a few more days. He proposed, and then she went back immediately. They knew each other for a total of 7 days before getting married in Egypt. And we also heard about some conflicts. So she's worried that they're going to have more conflicts. So she's trying to get out ahead of that. So let's see how they work this out.
No, my love, this is true. You don't want to start a fight.
You don't start any fights?
Sometimes, but not much as you do.
Mahmood and I argue about everything. Certain friends that I hang out with, drinking, or anything that has to do with men. He doesn't really want me to be anywhere near men. He wants, me to live on like a planet full of only women.
Okay, so we're hearing that at least a component of their fighting has to do with what I believe to be a cultural difference. I'm sure not everyone in Egypt is like him, but I'm guessing a lot are. Enough anyway. We saw with Eve and Muhammad was like this as well. But we're hearing from Nicole that what they fight about is if she hangs out with any sort of guy, and also if she leaves the house, or drinking, which I'm guessing is a no-no according to his culture or his cultural pocket. So yeah, this is why you date someone for a while before you get married, because you have to get to know their value system, their culture, their religion, their beliefs, how they see gender, how they see the world, So this doesn't look good because we haven't... Well, we did see with Rebecca and Zied that when Rebecca first went to Tunisia, I believe, that Zied was getting on her case about wearing certain clothes, and that was a red flag of this sort of thing. But Zied, upon coming to the States, seemingly completely adjusted, or he was just saying, look, when you're in Tunisia, you have to do this, but when we go to the States, you can do whatever you want, because that's the United States, different culture. So maybe they're in that kind of flexible situation. I don't know, but they're going to Egypt. So, but again, I think Egypt has a variety of customs around this. So I don't know. Let's continue watching.
What about last time when we were fighting about the clothes? But the biggest thing and the strangest thing that we fight about constantly is my clothes.
Okay, so add that to the cultural difference, I think. I don't know, we'll hear from Mahmood, but I'm guessing that he, according to his custom, wants her to dress in a more conservative way, in a way that covers the body and the hair and everything else. So they fight a lot about that. And from what I understand, her value system has a lot to do with clothes, has a lot to do with what she dresses up in. I think, anyway, at least she exhibits a lot of signs of that. So, yeah, that's going to be a major clash, and that would be something that you'd have to work out while you're dating someone before getting married.
Fight about constantly is my clothes. We fight endlessly for hours about what I can and cannot wear.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fighting. Endlessly for hours. Wow. I mean, it comes down to, I don't know, we'll see, but it might be a deal breaker, right? That she is like, no, I'm not going to dress traditionally as an Egyptian woman the way you want me to. And he could be like, well, I can't be with you if you don't do that. And this is why you date for a while before you get married in 7 days after meeting someone on a vacation. I don't know. I'm being judgmental. Maybe they'll work it out.
We need to make sure that I know what the expectations are, because I remember you saying you just need to cover your body. That was what you told me. I thought that was the rule.
Okay, my love, I always ask you to cover your body, because you can cover your body, but you making like this so tight, can't show like your body, so no.
So now you're saying like tight is an issue.
Of course, I always said that.
No, I thought it was just that there needed to be like fabric covering like my skin.
Okay, sounds like maybe she's willing to try to adjust, and they're refining what the expectation is or what the cultural norm is. So maybe there's a path forward where she's just like, look, I don't like this, but fine, I'll figure out a way so that I'm wearing things that I like, but that adhere to the cultural norm of your family or your community or your religion or wherever this comes from, because, I'm moving to Egypt, so I should probably try to adjust. But, the overall landscape of this, of course, is within sexism. Different cultures have different manifestations of sexism and different, perhaps, amounts of sexism. And we've shown this in the data when we study attitudes and laws. There are laws in other countries where women have almost no rights. It changes over time, of course, but this notion that women have to wear a certain way, they have to dress a certain way, and they don't have power to do otherwise. There are cultures, and the United States is similar. It's just, it manifests differently and maybe to a lesser extent on average, but there's this notion in the patriarchy, in misogyny and sexist attitudes that says that women are possessions of men, and that also women are temptresses, and that if women show any kind of indication of sexuality, then they are sluts, and they are disgusting, and it's unseemly, and they need to be judged or even literally beaten into submission or something like this. And it's this notion, it's also based on this notion that's sexist towards men, which is that men can't control themselves, that if women were to dress a certain way, that they're in it, men would be unable to prevent themselves from essentially raping the individual who is showing some skin, or they're wearing a tight shirt or something, which is not true. Men are not driven to sexually assault by that. Are some men like that? Yeah, absolutely. Are some people like that? Absolutely. Are some men in cultures like this more likely to do it because of their attitudes about women and what they think gives them the right to put hands on bodies? Yeah, from what I understand, some of these cultures, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it's like, well, it's oppressive to women to force them to dress in ways that they don't. Now, maybe many of the women in this culture is like, I don't mind dressing this. I like dressing like this. Okay, fine. I mean, I could see a benefit to it. It's like, when I go to the store, I don't have to put on makeup. I don't have to do my hair. I mean, I don't know about makeup, but, because I have the thing over my head and I'm all covered up and everything. I don't have to, it's easier. I don't know. Maybe it's harder. I don't know. Who knows? But the point is that, so again, many of the women might be like totally fine with it. They might love that custom. It might be totally in line with their values and doesn't harm them at all. But on one hand, undoubtedly are some women that feel oppressed by that and are just like, look, I would just like to do something else today, or I'd like to experiment with other kinds of clothing or something. And they can't do that because of the cultural pocket they're in, that they'll be oppressed or harmed, or in some countries literally locked up and murdered, right? And so that happens sometimes. The double-edged sword of that is that if the women don't do that, there's a greater chance in reality that men will, I've seen reports of this, where men will just mob sexually assault women who are dressed in what they believe to be slutty or available or something. And to our eyes, they're just dressed in regular Western clothes or something, So on one hand, it's like, well, it's oppressive. On the other hand, it's like, given the landscape, to save yourself from the sexual assault, maybe you should dress that way. Now, that's not the women's fault, though. It's the men's fault. It's the system's fault. It's the patriarchy. Women shouldn't have to dress a certain way to avoid being sexually assaulted. Women are still sexually assaulted in these countries, regardless of how they're dressed, of course. But anyway, I believe I have a value It's a value. It's a moral belief that people, regardless of gender, should have the freedom to do what they want to do as long as they're not harming other people. And if women in other countries want to dress the way that they want to dress and it's not harming other people, and there's no rational case that it is, because people always do this, like, what about the kid? What about the children? You can't dress like that. What about the children? I mean, I've seen videos literally of, you'll see someone come up to a woman and say, I can't believe you're dressed like this. My child has to look at you, that kind of thing. And then the TikToker or something will show what they're wearing, and it's just like, it's just regular clothes that are a little tight or something. And it happens in the United States. The point is that there's just a long history of women's bodies are disgusting. Men are in control of women. Lots of systems of power to oppress women. You will dress a certain way. You will be covered. You are not a human being. You're basically just this possession of mine, and you are mine. Your body is mine. I can tell you what to wear. So when I see stuff like this, there's a bit of me that has that reaction. So I just wanted to get that out there. But, the Mahmood isn't going to change his culture. He's a product of it. And she's moving to that country, so she should try to educate herself about what's even possible. Because there's a possibility that even if Mahmood were to agree to compromise with Nicole, that Mahmood might be ostracized by his community, might even be at risk of being fired or some other kind of negative consequence. I don't know that. Again, my understanding is Egypt has a lot of different cultural differences among the Egyptians that live there, right? So, but it appears that at least Mahmoud is more in the traditional side, right? And there's a possibility that for him, this is not an option. That life would be very, very difficult if Nicole doesn't comply or doesn't dress the way that she's supposed to. I don't know what the landscape is, but I just want to put it out there that overall, I value and have a moral that people, regardless of gender, should be able to do what they want to do as long as they're not harming other people. And harm, it's a pretty broad topic, right? And we can get into the philosophy, the nuances of that, of course. But in my book, for Nicole to dress the way that she wants to dress, it's not harming anyone else. Other people are choosing to see it as harm, but it's not rational to believe that it's harmful to other people for Nicole to dress how she wants to dress. It threatens the power structure. It threatens the norm. It looks strange. It might make the family look bad because people choose to see it that way. It happens in the reverse, actually, in my community, where you will see a woman dressed up in traditional clothing from, say, the region of Egypt, and they will get a lot of looks. A lot of people will discriminate against them. They will worry that that individual is going to be a terrorist. I mean, literally. So there's oppression and misunderstanding and prejudice all over the world. So it's not as if it just happened in Egypt, it's happening in the United States. Anyway, Mahmoud seems like a nice enough fella, so maybe he'll adjust. But that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how is he supposed to adjust? Maybe they'll decide to move to the States where he can be with her, they can be together, and she can dress the way that she wants to, and maybe that's the end result of that. Maybe that's the happy ever after scenario.
I don't want you wearing clothes. It's like, oh, it's like Sam on your body. No.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you talk about clothes now.
No, you said we could find something that would make us both comfortable and happy.
No more.
No, we're going to talk about it until I get there because I want to get it right. I don't want...
Okay, good. I was wondering if she might be trying to dial it in, trying to really get specific. It's like, okay, how can I do what I want to do while still complying with the rules? And she's trying to refine that. And it's actually really great she's doing this before she comes over there because it would be good to know this information, plus, help her to pack, right? So this is good, proactive.
You're never going to be able to wear that style. Then he sees a girl who's wearing a much longer skirt and totally buttoned up. And he says this is beautiful and this is what you will wear. I had a sick feeling in my stomach at that point because I never had anybody tell me what I was and wasn't going to wear. I said yes because I thought there would be some wiggle room. but there is none. Like there is, it's
Yeah, it's good that she is clarifying that she was under the impression that there was some flexibility, wiggle room, where she would be able to not go full traditional clothing and maybe make some other kind of, I think the way she thought it was, as long as I have most of my body covered, not my head, because I don't want to do that, then I'm in the clear. But she's, I think, learning now, like, no, it's way more extensive in terms of what the expectation is.
completely like very
You didn't take me
rigid.
serious?
No, I didn't. And I didn't
So
think
you
about it.
told
I really didn't give it any, I didn't ask any questions.
You said yes, and okay, I respect you because you don't know that. You don't can understand like this big deal like that. But you, man, is so hard. Like,
Yeah, I know. I didn't think.
Yeah, I'm guessing from his perspective, he is thinking, why can't she just do what all the other women do in my community or my family? They all do it and they're fine. What's wrong with her? But from his perspective, he doesn't know that it is a very strange ask for especially an American woman who values clothing as much as she does. Cultural misunderstanding. And again, this is why you date people for a while before you get married.
Very hard about it, and I really regret that. But I don't regret marrying you because I absolutely love you, and I can't imagine not being married to you. So that's why I'm going along with this whole thing.
I do my best, my love, but about clothes, you know, nothing going to change about that. I can't change my mind about that.
Okay, so he is telling her and us that this is a deal breaker, essentially, that there's no way around it. There's no flexibility there. Maybe that's not true, but at least he's clearly stating that. And, you know, it's good that he's at least making it clear, especially before she goes out there. A lot of people on this show will not be clear, and then they'll say, well, I'll tell her later about that. So, you know, he's being upfront about that, and so she can make a choice that, look, this is a hard line, and if you're going to come back to Egypt, then it's this way or no way. And she said earlier she's really in love with him, so, you know, it's a conundrum for her for sure.
I know it's hard for you, I know.
I know that he's trapped in his cultural conditioning. And for him to fully cover my body, that's just what a wife does.
I wish she would have elaborated more on that. Maybe she will. But she says, I know he's trapped in his cultural conditioning. And that implies that Nicole is not. We're all trapped in our cultural conditioning. Nicole and I are in a similar culture, West Coast United States. Well, she's from, where's Nicole's from? She's from originally Idaho, which isn't that far from, Idaho is just a vast chasm of cultural difference between Idaho, generally speaking, and Seattle. Not always, of course, but it's significant. And but I think she's more LA kind of culture than Idaho, seemingly. And anyway, point is that all of us are trapped within our culture. All of us have been indoctrinated into a culture. And one of the questions I would ask students, I think it's less so now, but for many, many years, I would ask students on the first day of school, tell me about your culture. Tell me about what, I can't remember the exact questions I would ask, but I would have people, go around the room and everyone would describe what they cared to share about their culture. And for non-white people, it was pretty easy to answer that question. It's like, oh, well, I'm black, and so da-da-da, or my ancestry is half Japanese, half Swedish, and so da-da-da-da. And for white people, what they would say is, I don't have culture. They would say, I don't have a culture. And when you ask a fish what it's, like to be wet, what it's like, what's the phrase? What does water feel like or something? They'll just be like, huh, water? It's all around them. You don't know you're in it because it's always been there and it always will be there. So for Americans, they grow up in a common mainstream American culture, and there are many cultural pockets in the United States, of course, but if you're, general mainstream, and we may say West Coast United States culture, of her age group or something, and you ask these people, okay, what's your culture? They'll be like, I don't have any culture, because a lot of Americans define culture as the other. Black people have culture. Asians have culture. Europeans, French people have culture. Americans, they don't have any culture. And it's simply not true. When you attribute culture to like cuisine or something, or the kinds of common things that people will attribute, then maybe because the United States isn't old enough to have traditions that are along those lines. I mean, it's argued that you could have a lot of identified cuisine that is, barbecue, for example, I think is one. But anyway, point is that, now my mouth's watering thinking about barbecue, but point is that everyone is in a culture. Everyone is indoctrinated into a culture. And it's very important to fit into a society, to understand your privilege, to understand where you're coming from, to understand how your culture has indoctrinated you. Everything that you think and feel and believe is influenced by the culture around you. There's a lot of nuances to it, of course. Different families, you could have families that live right next to each other, and there are significant cultural differences, so it's not like region necessarily defines that. But a lot of the things that I believe, the fact that I believe that women should be able to dress the way they want to, you could argue I was indoctrinated into a culture that believed that to be true. So is that the truth, or is it just a cultural idea? Well, these are very complicated questions, and it is investigated through hermeneutic, dialectic discussions where you try to zero in on what is likely to be the best truth, or what sort of truth we're going to privilege. And I have done a lot of that. I can't say that I know the answer to those questions, but I will say that generally speaking, I feel very good in my value that people, regardless of gender, should be able to wear what they want to wear as long as they're not harming other people, and that other people should not judge that, and other people should just let that be. As long as their clothing isn't interfering with your life at all, people should be able to do it. And especially when you understand the history of men possessing women and controlling them and saying you're going to dress a certain way, I have control over your body, I have control over everything. Women who show parts of their body are sluts, and therefore they're irrelevant, or they're not good as human beings. They're disgusting. They're dehumanized. When you understand the history, then you really have to say, well, I really have to lean against my sexist notions that I was indoctrinated into a different way of thinking. Anyway, so how did I get on that topic? Anyway, she had said he is trapped in his culture, but we're all trapped in our culture unless we evaluate it.
We're just gonna have to keep thinking about this and how to kind of like manage the fights a little better so they don't get too out of hand. I have a one-way ticket to...
Like, one of the elements of her being trapped in her culture might be that, well, the American way is the way. And because I want to dress this way, then I get to dress this way, and I don't have to adjust to other cultures. Americans tend to believe that, especially white Americans, because there's a whole long history of that, of just, this is the way it is. When the Spanish came to South America, they were just like, Catholicism is the religion. I don't care about any of the other religions, and we are going to eradicate all the other religions. We're going to impose Catholicism on everybody, because that's just the way it is. Catholicism is right and you are wrong. And white people have a long history of that. And so with her, you could argue that she is, one, perhaps exhibiting the American cultural notion that she has no culture and that she's not trapped in a culture, which is, of course, absurd. And two, that she will be able to transport her culture into Egypt. It'd be different if he was coming to the States or they were both going to Canada or something, but she's moving, intending on living forever in Egypt. And I think she's still in the mindset of just like, well, but my culture's right. And so it's going to happen. And that's just the way that it is. And your culture is this weird culture, but my culture is right. My belief system is right. And your culture is wrong, and you've been indoctrinated. I haven't been indoctrinated because I'm just right. It's that kind of assumption, right? Now, I agree with her. You could argue because of my culture. I would argue because I've actually just thought about what is good about my culture and what is bad about my culture. I haven't arrived at the promised land with that exploration. I'm probably 10% down the road, of course. it's it's really hard to move down that road of discovery of yourself and how you're embedded in a culture. But I would tend to agree with her that she should be able to wear what she wants even in Egypt. But it's naive to believe that you would be able to pull that off without any sort of major consequences. But I don't know. Maybe this will work out.
Egypt, and I am super nervous about just staying there again, especially since the last time it didn't work out.
I've never experienced such a challenging situation ever. Like, all of the problems that have existed between us are still there. It's scary.
Okay, so I think we're hearing that their conflict, which caused her to go back to the States and separate from him, is, and basically it sounds like everything other than the legality of the divorce. It kind of sounds like that. Like she moved to Egypt, they got married, they had only known each other for 7 days, and they proceeded to fight all the time. And we're hearing now that at least a good portion of their fighting, if not the majority of their fighting, was about clothing. Basically, everything she's identified thus far, I think, is him trying to tell her how she's supposed to act, that she's supposed to dress a certain way, she's not supposed to talk to any sort of men, and she's not supposed to drink alcohol because it's against their religion or their culture or something. And that's all they fought about. They fought about that, and she, resisted and was angry, and he was like, no, you can't, and da-da-da-da. I don't know what the nature of that conflict went. And then she threw up her hands and said, I'm done, and she came back to the States. That's the way it sounds. I don't know, maybe there's more detail there. And so now she's going back, or I think she already has her ticket, but she's talking with him, trying to resolve some of these things so that they don't fight. I mean, maybe in her head she's like, well, I've thought about it more, and I miss him so much that I'm willing to make an adjustment. But she doesn't phrase it that way. So it sounds like, well, why are you going back if you know, and he has very clearly stated, like, this is a hard line. Why are you going back if it's just going to continue the fighting that caused you to leave in the first place? I don't know. Maybe she's more flexible than she's letting on.
Can you give me a kiss? Come here.
We have to find a way, to deal with what comes our way and put, everything we have into this, so we could just be two people in love.
Yeah, and that I can sympathize with. For her, she's like, if we can just get rid of these customs, we're in love with each other and we could have a beautiful life together. And that is a tragedy, and I will sympathize with that. That is sad that there wasn't a solution there somehow.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, let's adjourn there. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. And take care of other people. Let's all take care of each other because we all deserve it. We really, really do.